They were in that house for 41 minutes that we're aware of. 41 minutes. Again, this is not a professional takedown. This is somebody that doesn't know how to handle the situation that's in front of them.
What if the person we've all been watching on Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera, the suspect in the ski mask that millions have analyzed frame by frame for 6 weeks straight, never actually tried to enter through that front door at all? What if his entire purpose that night was something completely different from what we've all assumed? According to a former FBI special agent with 25 years of experience investigating kidnappings and violent crimes, that's exactly what the physical evidence reveals. And if she's right, it means we've been looking at this case wrong from the very beginning. It means the person we see on camera wasn't the one who took Nancy. It means there were at least 2 people working together that night, each with a specific job to do. And it means whoever planned this operation had detailed inside knowledge of Nancy's home that could only come from one place. This is Crime Uncovered. What you're about to hear is based on expert analysis from FBI veterans, physical evidence that investigators have been quietly examining, and details that point to something far more calculated and disturbing than anyone initially realized. But before we go any further, I need to be completely clear about something. Everything discussed in this video is based on publicly available information, investigative reporting from credible news organizations, and expert analysis from law enforcement professionals who have worked similar cases. No one has been charged in connection with Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Everyone mentioned in this video is presumed innocent under the law. The theories we explore are based on available evidence and professional interpretation. They are not accusations, and they are not established facts. If you have any information about Nancy's disappearance, please contact the FBI immediately. The tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. There is currently a $1.2 million reward for information leading to Nancy's safe return. Now let me tell you about Nancy Guthrie, because before she became a national headline, she was simply a woman living quietly in Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She's the mother of Savannah Guthrie, the co-host of NBC's Today Show. But before all the media attention and the massive reward and the FBI investigation, Nancy was just a neighbor on Camino Real in the Catalina foothills. She was the woman who sent Christmas cards every December. She waved at people walking their dogs past her house. She knew the families on her street by name. In a city of more than 500,000 people, she had created a small community around her where people looked out for each other, where everyone knew Nancy as the friendly woman with the kind smile who'd lived in that house for years. She has a pacemaker. Her health is fragile. Her family has been open about the fact that she requires regular medical monitoring, that she takes specific medications, that being away from her doctors and her prescriptions and her medical equipment for any extended period could have serious, potentially life-threatening consequences. When we talk about Nancy being missing for 46 days, we're not just talking about 46 days of uncertainty for her family. We're talking about 46 days without the medical care that keeps an 84-year-old woman with heart problems alive and stable. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy did something completely ordinary. She had dinner with her daughter Annie at Annie's house. They spent time together. They talked. It was unremarkable in every way. The kind of normal family evening that none of us think twice about until something happens that makes us realize how precious those ordinary moments actually are. Around 9:50 p.m. that night, surveillance cameras captured Nancy's garage door closing at her home on Camino Real. She was safely inside. She was probably getting ready for bed, going through her evening routine, expecting to wake up the next morning to another ordinary day. She had no idea that in less than 4 hours, everything would change. At 1:32 a.m. on February 1st, 2026, Nancy's Nest doorbell camera captured something that would eventually be seen by millions of people. A male suspect appeared at her front door. He was wearing a ski mask that completely obscured his face. He had on thick gloves that appeared to be either medical examination gloves or heavy winter gloves. He was carrying a backpack on his shoulders, and he appeared to have a holstered weapon positioned at his waist. And then he did something strange. For the next 15 minutes, from 1:32 a.m. until 1:47 a.m., this suspect moved around Nancy's front porch in a way that didn't make sense if his goal was to break into the house. He approached the camera. He stepped back. He manipulated something near the doorbell mechanism. At one point, he held up what looked like a plant branch or foliage directly toward the camera lens, as if trying to block the view. His movements weren't smooth or confident. They looked uncertain, almost like he was buying time or waiting for something. To most people watching this footage over the past 6 weeks, it looked like an amateur criminal who didn't really know what he was doing. Someone who was trying to break in but couldn't figure out how to disable the camera or get past the door. But to Jennifer Coffindaffer, a former FBI special agent who spent 25 years working kidnapping cases, it looked like something entirely different. It looked like a person whose job that night had nothing to do with entering Nancy's house. It looked like someone running out the clock. It looked like a distraction. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera went completely dark. The video feed stopped. From that moment forward, we lost visual confirmation of what was happening at Nancy's front door, but we have other pieces of the timeline that fill in what happened next. At 2:12 a.m., 25 minutes after the camera went dark, the Nest system's internal software logged a motion detection event. Even though video recording had been disabled, the camera's sensors detected that someone or something was still moving near the front door. We don't have footage of what triggered that alert, but the timestamp tells us someone was still there, still doing something, still present at the scene. At 2:28 a.m., 41 minutes after the camera went dark, and 56 minutes after the suspect first appeared on video, Nancy's pacemaker disconnected from its remote monitoring system. Pacemakers like Nancy's are designed to continuously transmit data to medical monitoring services, so doctors can track heart function and detect problems. When that transmission stops, it means one of two things. Either the device itself was damaged or disrupted, or the person wearing it moved beyond the range where transmission is possible. Given that Nancy's home had both Wi-Fi and cellular connectivity that should have allowed the pacemaker to transmit from anywhere in the house or even the immediate yard, the disconnect at 2:28 a.m. is significant. It means something happened at that moment that either took Nancy out of range or interfered with the device itself. At 2:36 a.m., just 8 minutes after Nancy's pacemaker stopped transmitting, surveillance cameras captured a vehicle on a residential street approximately 2.5 miles from Nancy's house. 8 minutes. That's barely enough time to get someone from inside a house into a vehicle, drive 2.5 miles through residential neighborhoods where you have to obey traffic laws to avoid attracting police attention, and arrive at that location. The timing is so tight that it suggests the people involved knew exactly where they were going and were moving as quickly as they could without drawing attention. When family members couldn't reach Nancy by phone later that morning and contacted authorities, investigators responded to her home and made several discoveries. There was blood on the front porch near the door. No DNA testing would later confirm it was Nancy's blood. The quantity hasn't been made public, and investigators haven't specified whether it appeared to be from a minor injury or something more serious. But the presence of any blood at all indicates a struggle, a physical confrontation, an injury that the suspects either didn't plan for or couldn't prevent. But here's what investigators didn't find, and this is just as important as what they did find. There were no signs of forced entry through the front door, no damage to the door frame, no scratches or pry marks on the lock, no indication that anyone had used tools to break through. And the security gate that Nancy had installed on her front door, a heavy, reinforced metal barrier that neighbors describe as extremely sturdy, was completely intact. No dents, no damage. No signs that anyone had attempted to force it open. Nancy Guthrie hasn't been seen or heard from since those early morning hours of February 1st. Despite a massive investigation involving dozens of FBI agents, despite surveillance footage from multiple cameras, despite a reward that has grown to $1.2 million, no suspect has been publicly identified and no arrests have been made. For weeks, law enforcement and the public focused intensely on that doorbell camera footage, trying to understand what the suspect was doing during those 15 minutes on the porch. Behavioral experts studied the way he moved. Technical specialists examined how the camera was disabled. Millions of people online analyzed every frame looking for identifying details, a visible tattoo, a brand name on the backpack, as anything that might lead to identification. But Jennifer Coffindaffer looked at all the available information about this case and noticed something that most people had completely overlooked. And what caught her attention wasn't something she saw on the doorbell camera footage. It was something investigators did after Nancy disappeared. Coffindaffer spent a quarter century as an FBI special agent working violent crimes across the United States. She investigated kidnappings where every decision meant the difference between recovering a victim alive or not. She learned to read crime scenes, to understand what physical evidence reveals about how a crime was committed and who committed it. She knows investigative protocols and what certain actions by law enforcement actually signal about their theories and their evidence. And when she studied the Nancy Guthrie case, one detail immediately stood out. It was mentioned in some news reports but not really explored or analyzed in depth. Most people didn't think twice about it because it seemed like a routine security precaution. Investigators changed the locks on the back of Nancy's house. Now, if you're not familiar with crime scene investigation protocols, that might seem completely normal and unremarkable. Of course, they'd change the locks after someone was abducted from their home. Of course, they'd want to secure the property. But to someone with Coffindaffer's experience, that detail is a signal. It's information. Because investigators don't just randomly change locks on every door and window as a general precaution. They change locks on specific entry points for specific reasons. They change locks when they believe a particular entry point was used to gain access. They change locks when they think someone who shouldn't have access might still possess a key to that specific lock. They change locks to tell you something about their investigation without actually saying it directly. And the fact that the locks were changed on the back of Nancy's house, specifically the back, not the front entrance where all the camera footage shows the suspect, not the side doors or windows, told Coffindaffer exactly what she needed to know about where investigators believe the entry actually occurred. In an interview analyzing the case, Coffindaffer laid out her theory in clear, direct language. The fact that they changed locks on the back, she said, it makes me think that entry was made from the back, went through the garage, entered the home, and then the person that we see on video, his duty was actually to disable that camera. Let me break down what she's saying, because this reframes everything we thought we understood about that doorbell footage. The person we see on camera at Nancy's front door wasn't trying to break into the house. That was never his assignment. His job was to disable the front-facing camera and to create the appearance that someone was attempting entry from the front, while a second person, working in coordination with him, actually entered Nancy's home from the back, probably through or near the garage area where there was less security and less visibility from the street. Think about what this means for all those strange behaviors we saw in the video. The suspect spending 15 minutes on the porch when a real break-in takes minutes at most. The indecisive movements, the stepping forward and back, the holding up of foliage toward the camera. None of that was confusion or amateur nervousness about committing a crime. All of that was a person doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Stay visible at the front door, keep attention focused on the front of the house, run out the clock while his partner got into position and made entry from the back, and then disable the camera at the precise moment when his partner needed the surveillance to go dark. Coffindaffer continued with an observation that connects multiple pieces of this investigation. It made a lot of sense to me that there was a division of labor and that more than one person was involved. Division of labor. That phrase is critical. It means this wasn't a spontaneous crime committed by one person who saw an opportunity. It means there was planning. It means there was coordination. It means at least two people, possibly more, each assigned a specific role that they had to execute at specific times for the whole operation to work. Person A, go to the front door at 1:30 a.m. Spend approximately 15 minutes creating the appearance of an attempted entry. Disable the front camera at 1:47 a.m. when your partner signals that they're inside. Stay in position to handle any complications. Person B, approach from the back of the property where front-facing cameras can't see you. Enter through the garage or a back door while the front distraction is happening. Locate the target, establish control. Be ready to move at 2:30 a.m. This theory explains why the suspect on camera behaved the way he did. He wasn't struggling to break in. He was waiting. He was counting down the minutes until his partner could get into position. He was making sure that anyone watching the front of the house, whether live or on camera later, would think all the action was happening at the front door, when in reality, the actual crime was taking place somewhere investigators couldn't see. And there's another piece of evidence that supports this two-person theory, something that most people didn't pay close enough attention to when they watched that doorbell video. The suspect's backpack was full when he arrived. Chip Massie is a former FBI special agent who spent years working as a hostage negotiator. He's been in rooms with kidnappers, trying to talk them into releasing their victims safely. He understands criminal behavior, criminal planning, and what equipment tells you about criminal intent. When he analyzed the Nancy Guthrie doorbell footage, he noticed something that revealed exactly what kind of crime this was. The backpack, Massie explained in an interview. They go in with a full backpack. It's pretty clear, at least from what we're able to see from those video stills. And if you're going in with a full backpack, you're not thinking of a cash grab, right? You go in with an empty backpack if that's the case. Think about what he's telling us. If you're committing a robbery, if your goal is to steal jewelry and cash and valuables from someone's home, you bring empty bags to fill with stolen goods. You don't know what you're going to find. So you bring capacity to carry whatever turns out to be valuable. But this suspect arrived at Nancy's door with a backpack that was already full, already packed with something before he ever left for Nancy's house. So what was in it? Based on what we know about the crime and how it was executed, Massie suggests several possibilities. Tools to disable electronic equipment, screwdrivers, wire cutters, devices designed to interfere with cameras or alarms, equipment to disrupt wireless signals or internet connectivity, communication devices like walkie-talkies to stay in contact with a partner without creating cell phone records, possibly even backup tools in case the primary method of disabling the camera didn't work. Everything this person needed for his specific, limited role in the operation. Disable the surveillance. Create a distraction. Buy time for your partner. The full backpack tells us this crime was never about robbery. This was about taking Nancy herself. And everything the suspects brought with them that night was chosen specifically for that purpose. And here's where the backpack evidence connects directly to the backdoor entry theory. If the person on camera had a backpack full of tools for disabling cameras and creating a distraction at the front, then somewhere else, entering from the back, there was another person with completely different equipment. That person would have brought restraints to control a victim who might resist, materials to prevent someone from calling for help. Everything needed for a different job entirely. Enter from the back, locate the target, establish immediate control, prevent escape or communication. 2 people, 2 jobs, 2 sets of equipment. One creates the distraction everyone focuses on. One actually executes the abduction that no one sees. But here's where this case becomes truly puzzling, because despite all this coordination and planning, the suspects made critical mistakes that suggest they weren't actually professionals at this kind of crime. Chip Massie caught these mistakes when he studied the doorbell footage with his years of experience analyzing criminal behavior. The suspect's movements, his equipment choices, the way he handled himself on camera, all of it pointed to someone who had a plan but lacked professional training in execution. We see a guy that is trying to disguise his gait, Massie observed. Once he enters toward the focal area of where that camera is, we see him slump and his movements become strange and exaggerated. His arms drop to his side. He's hunched over. Disguising the way you walk is something people do when they're worried about being recognized by someone who knows their normal movement patterns. But the way this suspect did it, with exaggerated hunching and awkward positioning, showed he didn't really know how to disguise himself effectively. A trained operative would adopt a different but still natural-looking gait. This suspect's movements looked forced and theatrical, like someone who had seen disguises in movies but never received actual training. Then there are the gloves. Massie pointed out that the suspect is wearing very thick gloves. They appear to be either medical examination gloves or heavy winter gloves, and those gloves are completely incompatible with the weapon he appears to be carrying. Those thick medical-looking style gloves don't match with that weapon, Massie explained. He's not going to be able to manipulate that weapon in a way that carries any type of proficiency. If you're carrying a firearm, you need finger sensitivity to feel the trigger and control how much pressure you're applying. You need dexterity to manipulate safety mechanisms, to chamber rounds, to clear malfunctions if something goes wrong. Thick gloves eliminate all of that, which means either the weapon was just for show and he never planned to actually use it, or he simply didn't understand basic weapon handling. And then Massie noticed something even more concerning about the weapon positioning. The way it's positioned on him, it's in his front pelvic area, Massie said. Anyone can reach to that weapon and grab it. So it's like he's almost offering it. This is a fundamental tactical error. A properly trained person would never position a weapon where someone else could easily access it, disarm them, or take it away. The front of the waist is one of the worst possible locations from a security standpoint. It's accessible to anyone standing in front of you, it's slow to draw if you actually need it, and it violates every basic principle of weapon retention. All of these details, the forced gait disguise, the incompatible gloves, the poor weapon positioning, point to the same conclusion. This person had consumed enough media to have a general idea of what a criminal should look like, but he had no actual professional training. But the most significant evidence of failed planning is the blood found on Nancy's porch. The blood on that front stoop, Massie explained, shows me a lack of planning. Somebody who wasn't ready for the moment, who didn't anticipate that there would be a struggle. Professional kidnappers plan for victim resistance. They expect people to fight back. They bring equipment designed to control struggling victims quickly and quietly, restraints that work in seconds, techniques for establishing control without causing injuries that leave evidence. The fact that there was blood, that there was a struggle violent enough to cause injury, tells us the suspects were not prepared for an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker to fight as hard as Nancy Guthrie fought that night. And of course, she fought. Imagine waking up at 2 a.m. to find masked intruders in your home. The terror of that moment. The desperate need to survive, to escape, to fight for your life with everything you have. Nancy fought hard enough to be injured, hard enough to leave blood evidence, hard enough that the suspects lost control of a situation they thought they had planned for. She's confronted with a nightmare, Massie said. I can't imagine the amount of terror that was present. So we're left with this paradox. On one hand, sophisticated planning with reconnaissance visits on January 11th and January 24th suggesting weeks of preparation, a coordinated two-person operation with divided roles, inside knowledge of Nancy's home and schedule, and technical capability to defeat surveillance systems. On the other hand, amateur execution with poor tactical skills, wrong equipment choices, and complete failure to anticipate victim resistance. How do you explain that contradiction? The most logical answer is that the people who planned this operation and the people who carried it out were different individuals with different skill levels. Someone with inside knowledge, someone who knew Nancy's house, her routine, her vulnerabilities, provided the intelligence, and created the plan. But the people who actually showed up that night to execute the plan lacked professional training in kidnapping, tactical operations, or crisis management. They had the intelligence. They lacked the skills. And that combination allowed them to succeed despite their mistakes. Which brings us to perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the timeline. The suspects were inside Nancy's house for 41 minutes. Most professional kidnappings are completed in under 10 minutes from entry to departure, because every additional minute on scene multiplies the risk exponentially. Neighbors might hear something. Police might respond to an alarm. The victim might escape. Something could go catastrophically wrong. But 41 minutes? From 1:47 a.m. when the camera went dark until 2:28 a.m. when Nancy's pacemaker disconnected. That's not a professional operation going according to plan. That's chaos. That's things going wrong. That's people who don't know how to handle the situation they've created. They were in that house for 41 minutes that we're aware of, Massie said. This is not a professional takedown. This is somebody that doesn't know how to handle the situation that's in front of them. What happened during those 41 minutes? Nancy woke up, either hearing a noise or sensing a presence. Based on the blood evidence, we know there was a physical struggle. Nancy fought back. Someone was injured. The suspects may have spent time trying to control the situation, trying to clean up blood they hadn't expected to find, trying to search for something, trying to deal with an 84-year-old woman who was fighting harder than they'd anticipated. All of this is consistent with a 41-minute timeline. None of it is consistent with professionals who know what they're doing, and despite being in the house for that extraordinarily long time, the suspects somehow removed Nancy without any neighbors seeing or hearing anything that prompted them to call police. Which raises an important question: how? Part of the answer may lie in what happened to other security cameras in the neighborhood that night. According to investigative reporting, FBI agents conducting their neighborhood canvass asked residents a very specific question. Did your internet connectivity go out on the night of February 1st? Do you have gaps in your surveillance footage from that night? This isn't a standard question agents ask during routine canvassing. They ask this when they have reason to believe that internet service or camera connectivity was intentionally disrupted across an area. At least one neighbor reported that when they reviewed their security footage after the FBI asked this question, they found no information available for the time period when Nancy was taken. Their camera, which normally recorded continuously, had nothing from those critical hours. Multiple cameras in the area around Nancy's property failed at approximately the same time. Additionally, a damaged utility box was found near Nancy's property, a box that provides internet and communication services to that area. The timing is difficult to ignore. Chip Massie addressed the possibility of signal jamming. Part of the conjecture is that they were using some type of jammer to eliminate that risk, he said. But he also pointed out a contradiction. It begs the question, how were we able to recover any photographic imaging if they were jamming signals? He's right. If they used a broad jammer that disrupted all wireless communications, we wouldn't have any doorbell footage at all. But we have 15 minutes of clear video before the camera was manually disabled. The most likely explanation is that the suspects used multiple methods working together. They may have physically damaged that utility box to disrupt internet service, which would disable any cameras that relied solely on internet connectivity to upload footage to cloud storage. But Nancy's doorbell camera may have had local storage or a cellular backup, so they had to disable it manually, which is exactly what we see in the footage. This multi-method approach to defeating surveillance suggests technical knowledge and planning that honestly doesn't match with the tactical mistakes we've discussed. The suspects understood how modern camera systems work. They knew that cutting internet would disable most cloud-based cameras. They knew which specific cameras would need individual attention. But at the same time, they wore gloves that made their weapon unusable and weren't prepared for their victim to fight back. The only way to reconcile this is to accept that we're almost certainly dealing with different people with different expertise. Someone with technical knowledge planned how to defeat the surveillance systems. Someone else actually showed up to execute that plan but lacked the professional skills to do it cleanly. Which brings us back to the security gate question that dominated early analysis of this case. A neighbor named Laura gave an interview to News Nation where she explained that Nancy had a heavy security gate installed on her front door, a reinforced metal barrier that you typically see in high-security homes. And according to Laura, who consulted a security professional specifically about this type of gate, it was nearly impossible to breach. "You're not breaking into those gates," Laura said. "You're never going to break into that security gate. I actually talked to a security guy about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he confirmed you're not breaking into those gates. If that gate was properly secured, there was simply no way to force entry through the front door without specialized tools, significant time, and noise that would have woken every neighbor within hearing range. And investigators found no evidence of any attempt to force the gate, no damage, no tool marks, nothing. Some people initially saw this as contradicting the backdoor entry theory, but actually the security gate and the backdoor theory support each other perfectly. If the front door had an impenetrable security gate, then the front door simply wasn't a viable entry point for anyone trying to force their way in. That's exactly what the backdoor theory proposes. The suspects couldn't use the front, so they went to the back, to the garage area where entry could be made more quietly and with less visibility from the street. But the security gate still matters for a different reason. Because even if they entered from the back, the suspects eventually had to remove Nancy from the property. They could have taken her out through the garage. Here's the same way they entered. But there's another possibility worth considering. They could have removed her through the front door. And if they did that, someone had to unlock that security gate from inside. Laura herself suggested this possibility. I think there may have been someone inside the house already that was about to take Nancy out, like an accomplice, and that he's at the front door waiting for them to open the door. Now, it's absolutely critical to state clearly. Investigators have publicly confirmed that Nancy's family members have been cleared. They are not suspects. They are victims who are desperately searching for their mother. But the theory about inside access doesn't require family involvement. In fact, it's far more likely that if someone with legitimate access was involved, it was someone who worked on the property or provided services to the household. Think about who has regular access to homes where elderly people live alone. Cleaning services that come weekly, landscapers who maintain the yard and pool maintenance workers, medical care providers, repair technicians, delivery drivers. All of these people have legitimate reasons to be on the property. All of them have opportunities to observe layouts, camera positions, daily routines. The FBI recovered surveillance thumbnails from cameras on Nancy's property showing people who worked there in the days before she disappeared. According to ABC News, those thumbnails show landscapers and pool workers. All of these individuals had been on the property. All of them had some familiarity with the layout and security systems. The evidence strongly suggests that someone with inside access to Nancy's home was involved in planning this crime. Someone knew when she would be home alone. Someone knew the layout well enough to plan entry from the back. Someone knew about her pacemaker and medical condition. Someone knew where cameras were positioned. Someone understood that the security gate made the front door unusable, but the back entrance was vulnerable. That level of detailed knowledge doesn't come from driving by someone's house a few times. It comes from being inside, from having legitimate access over time, from opportunities to gather intelligence without raising any suspicion. And that's what makes this case so deeply disturbing for anyone with an elderly parent living alone. If the suspects had inside access through legitimate work, Nancy would have had no reason to be suspicious. She wouldn't have thought twice about a regular landscaper or pool worker. The most dangerous criminals aren't masked strangers. They're people who gain trust and access, who seem helpful and professional, right up until the moment they betray that trust completely. So where does the investigation stand now, 46 days after Nancy disappeared? The massive federal response of the first week has scaled back. Most FBI work is now conducted from the Phoenix field office, with agents traveling to Tucson as needed. The physical evidence has been collected. The surveillance footage has been analyzed extensively. The interviews have been conducted. The forensic analysis of DNA, fingerprints, and digital evidence continues but requires significant time for laboratory processing. Steve Hooper, a former special agent in charge at the Phoenix FBI field office who has worked cases exactly like this, explained how investigations progress at this stage. It's a matter of finding that one person, that one credible source, he said. I guarantee the FBI's been tapping into their informants, their sources. The FBI is waiting for someone to come forward. An accomplice who gets scared. A friend or family member of a suspect who notices suspicious behavior. An informant who decides the $1.2 million reward is worth breaking silence. And that reward, $1 million from the family, $100,000 from the FBI, $100,000 from an anonymous donor, is genuinely life-changing money for most people. It's enough to start over. It's enough to buy safety if someone feels trapped in a dangerous situation. That's also why Savannah Guthrie's messaging strategy changed. Initially, she spoke directly to whoever had taken her mother, using language designed to appeal to their humanity and give them a psychological path to doing the right thing. But then her approach shifted completely. She stopped addressing captors and started addressing the public, asking anyone with information to come forward. Chip Massie, the FBI hostage negotiator, immediately noticed that shift. We saw a break from her addressing the captors, he explained. That points to there having been a substantial break in communication, or deadlines or proof of life that have passed. Multiple ransom notes were sent to media outlets demanding various amounts, $6 million, $70,000, $50,000, even one Bitcoin. But according to the FBI, there has been no direct, verifiable contact with anyone who can actually prove they have Nancy. The deadlines came and went without any proof of life being provided. One person, Derek Colella from California, was arrested for sending a false ransom note. But investigators quickly determined he had nothing to do with Nancy's actual disappearance. He was simply trying to exploit a tragedy. The FBI continues working methodically on DNA analysis, recovering camera data with help from Google engineers, conducting genetic genealogy work, analyzing cell tower records, and reviewing financial transactions of anyone who had access to the property. But what this case needs most is one person willing to speak up. If you were anywhere in the Catalina foothills area of Tucson between midnight and 3 a.m. on February 1st and saw anything unusual, a vehicle that didn't belong, someone on foot who caught your attention, any activity that seemed out of place, please contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Even if you think what you saw probably wasn't important, let investigators make that determination. Sometimes the smallest detail becomes the piece that solves everything. If you have security cameras that recorded footage from that night, even if you've reviewed it and didn't see anything obvious, submit it to tips.fbi.gov. Investigators can sometimes identify things in footage that homeowners miss. Vehicles in the background, shadows indicating movement, timestamps that establish patterns. If you know someone whose behavior changed after February 1st, someone who suddenly had money they couldn't explain, someone who seemed unusually nervous, someone who left the Tucson area unexpectedly, say something. You're not accusing anyone of anything. You're providing information that investigators can properly evaluate. And there's $1.2 million being offered for information that helps solve this case. And if you were involved in any capacity, if you were hired to help, if you provided information to those who carried this out, if you know who was responsible, your window to come forward voluntarily is closing. Every day the investigation progresses. Eventually someone will talk. When that happens, when investigators come to you instead of you going to them, every option you currently have disappears. Only prosecutors have the legal authority to offer immunity from criminal charges. Families cannot make those kinds of deals no matter how much they want to. But what Nancy's family can offer is their full support and understanding for anyone who helps bring her home safely. They've made clear they want Nancy back regardless of what condition she's in. They've committed to paying the reward. They've opened every possible door for someone to do the right thing. Nancy Guthrie is someone's mother, someone's grandmother, a woman who loved her community and her family. She's 84 years old with a pacemaker and serious health needs. Being separated from her medical care for 46 days, for nearly 7 weeks, puts her life at risk every single day. She's not a headline or a case number. She's a real person who is loved and missed. She has family members who go to bed every night not knowing if she's alive, if she's safe, if she's in pain, if she's scared. If you know anything, if you saw anything, if you heard anything, now is the time to speak. The FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. You can submit tips online at tips.fbi.gov. The reward is $1.2 million. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 46 days. Someone out there knows what happened to her. Someone knows where she is. Someone knows who took her and why. That person needs to come forward because Nancy deserves to be found, and her family deserves answers. This is Crime Uncovered. Subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated as new information emerges in this case. And please share this video everywhere you can. The more people who see it, the better the chance that someone with information will finally come forward and help bring Nancy home. We're not giving up on Nancy Guthrie, and we won't stop until she's found.